Welcome back to GTN Coaches Corner, where you get to treat us like your coaches. You can send in your triathlon, training or racing related questions using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. As always, drop them below this video or below any other video. So let's get stuck into this.
Yeah, starting with a question from Peter Gilmore, and he says, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Merry Christmas to all at GTN. Thanks. Yeah. My question is, what is the best way to put in elastic laces correctly, and as well, what way should I have the elastic laces set up in transition for a quicker transition from bike to run?
Nice. Well, firstly, elastic laces are brilliant. They're great to add to your bag of tricks for triathlon. Now, when you put them in your running shoes, the idea of it is so that you can simply slot your foot into your shoes quicker, nice and easily, and get out transition as quickly as possible, saving you some valuable seconds. Now, of course, elastic laces are going to give a little bit, and you've got to accept that. So don't go cranking them up so tight that they're actually going to cause issues, maybe tendonitis, cramping your toes up, squashing them. They are going to give a little bit, and you've got to accept that.
Yeah, you want to set them up just right so that they're not too tight and don't slowly squeeze your life out of your feet as you're running, but are tight enough that they don't feel like your shoe is going to fall off while you're running. It's a bit of a balance. You need to get used to this before race day. Elastic laces are pretty much only for race day. They're not something you want to use every day in training, but you do need to get used to them before race day. So do spend some time in them leading up to race day. Get used to that feeling of a slightly looser shoe without over tightening them. And then as far as setting them up on race day, how you set them up so that you can put your foot in. Remember, a wet foot is still going to be a little bit difficult to get into a shoe. It's not going to just slide straight in like it did in training or like it did with the sock on. So bear that in mind. It's not because of your elastic laces. They do help a whole lot, but they're not going to solve the problem entirely. Don't panic, don't rush through it. Take your time to put your shoes on properly. It's definitely well worth it to have your shoes on properly for the run leg.
Yeah, with that in mind, there's a couple of things you can do to help. One is using talcum powder, so that just allows your foot to slip in a little bit more easily. Another thing is just pulling up the tongue of your shoes, and with the elastic laces, you can almost wedge them a little bit when you pull them up. That just makes that entry of your foot into your shoe that little bit easier. But yeah.
You can also lace them one eyelet lower than you would your normal laces with the elastic laces. They will hold your foot. Again, it'll feel a little bit looser than you used to, but it's much easier to get them on, even if you lace them just one eyelet lower than you used to.
And also, just one final thing, there are numerous elastic laces out there that you can get with different designs on them. Personally, I have always just simply used elastic laces and tied them at the top, so there's no adjusting as they come through. In my opinion, if you're using elastic laces, you're doing it to save yourself those valuable seconds, so why faff around with tightening something? So it is entirely up to you. Try them out, but
you do get some that have a toggle that you just pull and slide the toggle down and that's a little bit easier. But like Mark says, the whole point of elastic laces is that you don't have to tie or fasten or tighten anything.
Yeah, so if you're wondering, it is perfectly fine just to tie them up and be done with it.
Okay, on to our next question, and it's from Elliot Dickinson, and he says, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Can you get some advice on returning to training after isolating for 10 days or more with no access to indoor equipment? Can you jump straight in where you left off, or should you gradually return to training over a week or so? This is, of course, if you feel well enough to start training again. Well, that's about as topical as it gets with COVID going around and everyone isolating and being stuck indoors. Mark can answer this.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I would suggest, even before you start trying to get back into training, whilst you're actually ill and taking that time off, make most of the time and just try to stay flexible, mobile, do some stretching, maybe even do some core work. That's not going to be stressing the body whilst it's already under stress from the illness, but keeping you kind of in shape to a degree.
Yeah, and even if you're not isolating and you're just stuck in a place or if you're not ill, but you're stuck in a place because you're isolating, you can still do some work just to keep relaxed and supple and ready to go when you do come out, even if you don't have any indoor equipment whatsoever to use. But then the rule, as we always say, from injury, from illness, from any kind of break from training, 2 days for every 1 day. So for every 1 day you were out and you couldn't train, it's going to take you 2 days to get back to where you were. So don't rush it. Don't jump straight back into training. To answer your question, you cannot just pick up straight where you left off if you've spent 10 days sitting around doing nothing. It's going to take you a while to get back to where you were. So be patient, be kind to yourself. it is what it is. You couldn't control it. It's a situation that is out of your control. So make the most of it. Don't punish your body by jumping straight back into something that it just can't cope with at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, using the 10-day example, I would probably say you're looking at a good 2 to 3 weeks of very easy, probably mostly aerobic training just to get yourself back into the swing of things. And actually, to start off with, as we've said, you're substantially cutting the volume down just to get yourself moving again. And you'll honestly, although it may be you'll feel very impatient at the time, you will reap the rewards of holding yourself back.
Yeah, take advantage of being fresh and using that freshness rather than rushing back into training and risking illness or injury.
Yeah, nice one. Well, moving on to the next question. Lev Bobrov said, "Hi GTN, thanks for these videos. I have a question. My perceived effort when riding on an indoor trainer is usually much higher than when I ride outside. I use the same bike, the same power meter for both. However, if I use the same FTP for my sub-threshold intervals, they're absolutely unbearable. But when I ride outside, it feels much more doable. Is this common?"
Well, yes, is the answer. It is common. Does that answer your question? No. Okay, we'll go into a bit of depth here because there's quite a lot of reasons why your indoor trainer might feel significantly harder than outdoors. Firstly, your indoor trainer, you're not recruiting as many muscles. You're stuck perfectly stationary, your bike's not rocking, so you can't use the rest of your muscles, you can't use those supporting muscles. You also can't change the muscles you use, whereas outdoors, even a slight shift on your saddle or your position or standing even is going to change the muscles you use quite drastically, and just a few seconds of rest for those other muscles is going to make them feel so much better, which you just don't get indoors. That's one of the first major things. The next thing is the actual quality of the indoor trainer that you're using.
Yeah, and I was actually going to jump in and say, initially, I mean, this is something we probably both experienced. I used to hate indoor riding for this very reason, because we used to use, I guess, quite simple in comparison to some of the trainers we're using these days.
They were pretty rudimentary.
Yeah, with the flywheels that almost sucked all the momentum out of your riding. So it meant you couldn't freewheel, and actually you just feel like you continually working against a resistance.
Yeah, the newer turbos, the newer smart trainers have really good flywheels that once you get them up to momentum, feel like they're outdoors. They feel like you've got some momentum going and you can stop pedaling for a second without completely slowing down. Whereas in the old days, it was literally if you stopped pedaling for one cycle, you were back at square one and starting again. There was a constant braking force and it felt awful. I used to hate it. I actually just literally didn't do it. I just couldn't handle it until the smart trainers came along, and it's so much better, makes such a big difference. So that might be your issue. Maybe you need to upgrade your trainer to something that's got a better flywheel that feels like it's more outdoor momentum. It also might be the situation that you're in. Remember, you need to simulate being outdoors. If you've got no air movement whatsoever, you're going to feel like it's a lot harder. Your body's not going to be able to dissipate that heat. You're not going to be able to breathe as easily, and it's going to feel a whole lot harder. So make sure you've got a decent fan pointing in the right direction, and it's on your face and it's on your legs so that you are getting some cooling effect. You don't underestimate how much harder it makes it being in a situation where your body can't dissipate that heat.
There's a few other things maybe to consider here. I do know people that have got an FTP for indoors and FTP for outdoors because they've really struggled with this. Another thing is, are you doing your FTP test outdoors on a hill? I've heard a lot of people doing this, and it's fine. Of course, you're going to get a nice high number, but is it realistic? Are you actually able to sustain that then on the flats or indoors? So if you've gone and done that to get a nice high FTP, maybe reconsider and go and retest on the flat to get a more accurate number.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of things to consider, but don't throw away indoor training entirely. There are solutions, potentially one of the ones we've already mentioned, and even if there aren't, it's really good mental training. So maybe just set more realistic goals indoors and stick to it. It's going to be good mental training for race day anyway.
Yeah. Brilliant. Next and final question from Baz Van Esch. I'm training for Ironman New Zealand and have some extra time over the holidays. Any tips and suggestions for a training camp at home, maximising benefit but avoid training fatigue? Thank you very much. Well, I'm afraid it's probably a little bit too late for you now, unless of course you've got January off. Then
lucky
brilliant.
People, yeah. I wish. Yeah. Anyway, be careful with the extra training time that you have over any break, any holiday. You can't cram training. You can't go from 10 hours a week to 30 hours in your week off. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, you are running the risk of well and truly overtraining and wrecking any chances of performing well at Ironman New Zealand. So don't do that. But you can get away with some good consistent training, really focusing on good quality training day in, day out, because you've got the time to recover and rest, and also potentially doing one bigger day, maybe a simulation day that's going to be really getting.
This is something I like. This is an option for a break. When you have the time to recover after it, you can take 2 or 3 days easy. You're lying on the couch, you can properly relax. You can actually go out there and do a proper epic day. It feels good. It feels good to get it done. It's really good for your motivation. You get a big 6, 7, 8 hour day out there, and you feel really good about yourself, but you also have the time to recover afterwards. You're not going straight back into your normal training, your normal life, because you're on holiday. So maybe consider throwing in one epic day. It's going to be a good boost to your fitness and your motivation without risking too much injury, illness, or doing a massive week of training.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great idea, but as we've said already, just be really careful. Don't overdo it. Fantastic set of questions, I think, today. So thanks ever so much, everyone. Please do keep them coming in using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Drop them below this video or below any video. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe.